Hi everybody, Chris of the Polish Geek welcomes you to another movie review. A review of possibly the most overrated movie of this year, one battle after another. Oh my gosh, this movie is so overrated, like almost every critic is basically praising it. And what I would expect it from mainstream critics, like that also includes honest critics like Jeremy Jahns and Adam does movies, but clearly this movie did not do for me what it clearly did for them. Because first and foremost, even leaving out the fact that it's a pure piece of political propaganda, even leaving out that fact, first and foremost, it's just so boring. But like, as soon as I went inside the cinema and from the very opening scene, I was already thinking, this obviously is a political propaganda. I mean, I knew it before. I mean, I did know all of this before actually from what I was reading about this movie and all, but I was hoping maybe it's a satire or maybe it's not so much shoved down your throat. But yes, from the very first opening 15 minutes, and it was obvious this is gonna be basically a pro-Antifa movie, an anti-ICE movie, like, which is not something I could possibly get behind on because, like, say what you want about Donald Trump, and I don't identify as a Trump supporter, but personally for me, call me a conspiracy theorist. I've been called it before, but I believe it's much more rational to be a conspiracy theorist than to think that anybody, and if it's the word of anybody in power, actually has your best interests at heart. But whatever. Again, your politics, it's completely your choice, but I generally, as I said, I don't trust anybody in the position of power, but that's neither here nor there. Ultimately, if you can give him a credit, is that he was absolutely right to nominate Antifa as a terrorist organization, because they are. And so yes, from the opening movie it was pretty clear that this is gonna be very much a pro-Antifa movie and anti-ICE, and oh my gosh, it was worse than I thought. Like, why can't there just be a movie someday where Antifa actually are the main villains? Because ideally, I would very much totally pay my money to see a movie like that. But oh well. So yes, the opening was already pretty cringy, and then it only started getting worse from there, because I was hoping that maybe at least it would be like one of those so bad it's good movies, or maybe a satire. Like, I mean, I did see some opinions online actually saying that this is pretty much a satire that makes fun of both sides, but personally, I didn't see that. And to think it's a satire that makes fun of everybody, you should probably be smart that Hollywood would never do something like that. Like, this is modern Hollywood we are talking about. But even leaving out the fact that the movie is an absolute piece of propaganda, even completely leaving that fact out, first and foremost, it's just so boring. Like, after this first opening sequence, I kind of resigned myself and thought, I guess, even because of the title, at least maybe I can hope for some cool action scenes at the very least, but it wasn't even that. I mean, the final sequence is kind of a pretty cool action scene, but again, action isn't cool when you're not emotionally invested in the characters, and that's actually the movie's biggest flaw, that the characters are completely so bland and so unlikable. They are almost like meant to basically be like caricatures of modern day craziness, except that this is technically all serious, because again, as I said just a few seconds ago, this is modern Hollywood we're talking about, and as a result, the characters, even though the movie very much clearly tries to make you root for them, it's just hard, because as I said, they completely are not likable, and they just all feel so bland and lifeless. In fact, I'm gonna argue that the main villain, although, well, certainly his ideology was certainly evil, and I'm not supporting that, but at the very least, you could say he was more relatable, because he was basically trying to fit in with the organization. And yeah, like, that could actually be considered relatable, because like, we all probably had this sometimes where we desperately try to blend in and fit in with the rest of the group and make a good impression on them, only to realize that we will either never belong, like especially in our teenage years, and even sometimes now, or alternatively, deep down it feels like we are sucking up instead of actually being our own person. So yeah, the main villain, at least with his motivation, he was written as more believable and realistic, but all the main characters were just like so bland and so boring. Oh my gosh. As I said, if the movie actually lived up to its title, and almost every scene there was a different shootout, I guess, between the Antifa and ICE, then while it will still be a propaganda, at least you could basically call it like a completely mindless action flick, and that's basically just like turn off your brain, but it wasn't even that. As I said, 90% of the time just spent on boring, uninteresting conversation and with the characters which you're completely not invested in. And also, I'm gonna unfavorably compare it to last year's Civil War, because Civil War, and yeah, that was a great movie. That was completely bipartisan and mostly focused on the actual political divide without really taking any political sides. So yes, Civil War was a great movie. People complained that there was very little action in Civil War, and yes, there was until the end when there was a really spectacular action scene, which was more than enough for me actually. But this, on the other hand, is like so boring and so one-sided. Oh my gosh, like, because yeah, Civil War from last year, as I said, that was a really great movie that actually addressed the political divide. But this is clearly just meant to be, I mean, if this was made like a couple years later, then I guess you could basically see it as satire of the political climate of mid 2020s, but choosing this movie to direct right now, I would say, is probably even worse. So overall, I have to say, One Battle After Another is so overrated, and I completely was invested in the movie and the characters at all. Like, this is one of the worst movies of the year, in my opinion, actually. Like, again, last year's Civil War, really great movie, and it actually felt like it was actually addressing the actual issues of the political divide without taking sides. But this is pure opposite. So overall, these are my thoughts on One Battle After Another, and thank you all of you for checking out this video. Press the like button, please subscribe to this channel, and I'll talk to you soon in another video. Talk to you then, bye!